Today we're gathering around the campfire with Marilyn, a QHS member whose life is as exciting and grounding as a hike through the mountains. But what trails did she tread to reach these heights? Let's trek into the wilderness and discover the adventures that led Marilyn to where she is today.
Hello, my name is Marilyn, and this is my prequel. I was born in 1952 in Columbus, Ohio, and I've resided in this area my entire life. My father, a first-generation Italian, was a true city slicker. My mother was second-generation Welsh, Scotch, and Irish, and was born and raised way down yonder in the holler by the creek in Gallipolis, Ohio, and was a country bumpkin. She eventually moved to Columbus to join her brother and sister who preceded her in leaving home, and that's where she met and eventually married my dad. My father practiced Roman Catholicism, and my maternal grandfather was a small-town Baptist minister. Needless to say, my background provided us with a variety of perspectives on life. I had 2 brothers and 1 sister. My childhood I considered to be very social. There were a lot of children in our neighborhood, and I made a lot of friends at our neighborhood school that I played with also. My first challenge came when I was 18 months old, and my mother was diagnosed with polio. She was paralyzed and in a coma. My brother and I were initially housed with relatives, but due to the fear of contracting polio during the epidemic, we were moved into a foster home. This is where I was physically abused, and my father figured it out by finding bruises on me. He talked the doctors into releasing my mother from the hospital, and against medical advice, brought my older brother and I home after 4 months. Needless to say that life was never the same again. I went from having a loving, nurturing, and attentive mother to one who was in a survival mode. She was not only in a survival mode because of the physical limitations, but also because of the emotional impact of the changes to her life. Her case of polio was considered to be extreme, and she was told she would never walk again, or if she did, it would be with crutches. My recollection of that time was of sitting on her lap and riding around in the wheelchair, but also of watching her lie on the floor of our living room with homemade sandbags that she was lifting with her arms and her legs and saying, "Where there's a will, there's a way." Well, my mom succeeded in learning to walk again without crutches. And I've got to say that that example that she set sustained me in a lot of difficult times during my life. It was also during that time that I sustained a burn on my right hand. My mother was sitting and ironing clothing, and I was by her side. The iron fell on my hand. The burns were 2nd degree, but became infected, so it left me with the noticeable scars on 3 of my fingers that I have to this day. My mother always blamed me for her contracting polio because she said her pregnancy with me was difficult and that it made her susceptible to the disease. She also took her anger out on me my entire childhood. In 1955, my little brother was born, and then in 1966, we were blessed with the birth of my baby sister, Susie, who has Down syndrome. She was microcephalic and had congenital cataracts and astigmas. Her diagnosis was very difficult to adjust to, and I grieved over the things I perceived that she would never be able to do for about 4 years of my life. I also perceived that she was brought into our family so that I could be her teacher and her guide. Then one evening, my then boyfriend and I were having dinner with friends, and we were talking about happiness and how it comes from within. My boyfriend made this statement, "You know, the most truly happy person I've ever met is Susie." And it was, in that moment, it was like a light bulb went off and a dark cloud just lifted from me. Now, 59 years later, I recognize that she was my teacher all along. She taught me more about the important things in life than any other person that's touched my life. She taught me the power of staying in the here and now. She taught me the fallacy of judging somebody else's life through the lens that's created by my experiences, and that her pleasures and my pleasures aren't necessarily the same. But most importantly, she taught me about unconditional love. Susie loves everybody, and she doesn't see black and white. She doesn't see Muslim or Christian. She doesn't see gay or straight. She doesn't see rich or poor. She loves without reserve. And she taught me these lessons without words of wisdom, as she has none. She is still nonverbal. But she taught me these things only by being who God created me to be and leading by example. My high school years were very social. I was a top student and a cheerleader. I had many friends, and I occasionally still see some of them. During my senior year, I tore cartilage in my left knee while doing flips in my backyard. I finished the season with wearing a knee brace on my left knee, and after basketball season, I had surgery to repair the injury. This left my left leg weaker than my right, despite having done physical therapy. I chose to relinquish gymnastics to prevent further injury. It was during the summer after high school graduation that I met Bill Joyner, the person who would become my first husband and the father of our children. This is the same person that I referred to previously in the passage about my sister Susie. We both attended the Ohio State University. He majored in business and I majored in nursing. I worked my way through college and graduated at the top of my class without debt. After graduation, Bill and I got married in 1975. I went to work in a hospital, and he bought a sign business. I also went back to school to become a realtor, and I sold real estate on the side. Bill and I also bought and sold properties for a profit, and we also purchased some income-producing properties, a few of which I still own. We became parents in 1981 when our daughter Allison was born. We decided that it would be best for our family if I would put my nursing career on hold to raise our children. In 1984, our son Cameron was born. Allison played the violin and Cameron played hockey. Their friends filled our home with joy. I had always intended to go back to college to get my Master of Science in Nursing once my children were in school, but God seemed to have other plans. It was during this time that I was introduced to the art of kinesiology by my daughter's violin teacher. I was intrigued by this modality and pursued knowledge avidly. I was privileged to have studied under 3 of the original 12 kinesiologists known as the Dirty Dozen. I was also privileged to have met the originator of the original techniques, and his name was George Goodhart. I met and became friends with Dr. Thie and his family, who was the person that was instrumental in divulging these once proprietary techniques to the general population. My main mentor, though, was a physician in New Zealand named Bruce Dew. It was while practicing techniques and learning techniques, that was my cat Dusty, that I was able to work through most of my childhood traumas. And even though I had some recollection of being in the foster home, I really didn't remember the abuse. I did, however, have an inner knowing. So I underwent hypnosis guided by a friend of mine, and I was able to retrieve the memories and work through the traumas. Sorry, my cat is distracting me here. I was also able to confirm with my older brother that the memories were valid. I branched out and studied many other modalities and attended workshops and classes and conferences and studied under people from all over the world. I opened my healing practice in 1983. I not only saw patients, but I traveled all over speaking about healing and also teaching. I taught kinesiology to second-year medical students at Ohio State University's College of Medicine. I also served on the National Touch for Health Board for 4.5 years, 2.5 of those years as treasurer, 1 as vice president, and the last one as member at large, since I was inundated at that time with family responsibilities. When my husband and I became empty nesters, we forged out our activities as a couple. We loved the outdoors, and we did a lot of hiking and canoeing. We also enrolled in a ballroom dance class and became avid dancers. We joined a performing Italian dance group. It was a rich and busy time in my life, and I had a lot to balance. After our daughter graduated from college and our son was in his last year, we were hit with a bombshell. Bill was diagnosed with an advanced case of lung cancer with metastasis. He was only expected to live for 12 days after diagnosis. He had been having intermittent symptoms for the previous year, but was being misdiagnosed and treated in ways that would mitigate the symptoms temporarily. Bill chose to do chemotherapy, but also some adjunctive interventions. He lived for 8 months and was functional for all but the last 2 weeks of his life. The doctors were astounded at the course of his illness, yet not one of them asked how this was even possible. Bill's illness and death were not the only challenges that plagued me at this time. Within 18 months, I lost not only my husband, but my father, my spiritual mentor, 2 cats, a dog, and a dear friend. I was executor of my mom's, dad's, and husband's estate at the same time, trying to get guardianship of my sister. My younger brother has psychiatric problems and lives in our parents' house, and was riddled with fear and convinced that the attorney and I were conspiring to take the house from him when we were trying to keep him in it. So he responded by blocking settling the estate of our parents in any way that he could. I was so overwhelmed with life at that time. I just wanted to stay in bed and put the covers over my head. But I had to get a job outside of my practice to keep my head above water, because I was also financially devastated by Bill's illness and his death. I could have surrendered assets, but at that time I was almost 55 years of age and facing retirement. So I chose to get a second job to bring in some income that was predictable. So I went to work for a holistic physician that had previously been an ER doctor and was practicing regenerative medicine. It was a good fit, and I worked for him for 15 years. I spit out the bit when I was 70 years old. People often ask me how I survived that period in my life. It was largely through faith that I made it, as God truly did send me everything I needed every step of the way. 2 individuals, though, whom God placed in my path were especially instrumental in getting me through this difficult time. One was a 21-year-old young man named Andrew, who 2 weeks before his birthday had a skiing accident. His face was obliterated and had to be totally reconstructed. He was left with a C2, C3 fractured, a traumatic brain injury, and was blinded. Every time I felt like I couldn't go on, or sometimes when I felt like I just didn't want to go on, Andrew would come rolling into the doctor's office in his wheelchair with all his faith and courage and determination, and it just lifted me enough that I could continue. I remember when Andrew heard that my husband had just passed away, he reached up and felt for my hand, and he patted it as he said in his halting, garbled, labored, brain-injured words, "I'm going to dance with you at your wedding someday." I just stood there and bawled because I couldn't fathom getting married again. But I was also very touched by Andrew's lofty goals, knowing that with the extent of his injuries, he shouldn't even be alive. After my husband passed away, at the insistence of our dance instructor, who happened to be a retired psychologist, I continued ballroom dancing. Dave, our instructor, fixed me up with a dance partner named George because he said that would keep guys from hitting on me and would also help me to be safe. Well, that was like asking the fox to watch the hen house. George and I practiced together, and we also performed doing showcases. But it wasn't long before he made it clear that he wanted to become more than just dance partners. So I wasn't ready, but George was patient. He was also a psychologist, and he was able to help me through some of the more trying and difficult times during this period in my life. 5 years later, though, we did get married. Incidentally, Andrew danced with me at my wedding reception, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house except for Andrew and me. We were actually beaming as we privately celebrated our individual milestones in that moment. I must admit that I'm not the same person as I was before experiencing the challenges during that time. I apparently had a lot of lessons to learn, and life beat me into submission. When Bill was dying and bills were piling up, we were so stressed. But each of us, at the same time, had the realization that our days together were numbered, and that we had a choice about how we could spend the time. We could either spend it worrying, which doesn't change anything, it just serves to make you miserable, or we could embrace the time that we had left, to enjoy it and savor it. We chose the latter. In the worst time in my life, I was able to experience a period of such love and joy and connectedness and peace like I had never experienced before. I can't always maintain that feeling, but I'm grateful that I have a baseline to return to. And I realize at a heart level that happiness truly doesn't come from what's outside of me, and that I also have the power to choose happiness in any moment. As I watched my husband fight for each breath, I realized how truly precious life is, and that if I wake up with breath, it's a cause for gratitude and celebration. After Bill passed away, to get out of bed required my learning how to change my thinking so that I could change my mood. When I thought about the enormity of what I was facing, I was debilitated. So instead, I focused on the next priority, and I could function. When I thought about how much I had lost, I was not able to get out of bed. But when I changed my thinking to gratitude for what I had had and what I still had, I could function. When I thought about how I previously didn't even have to look at a tag if I wanted to buy something, and at that time I could only afford one meal a day, again, I couldn't function. But then I started thinking about all the people that don't have food, don't get to eat every day, and I could feel gratitude for that solitary meal. When I thought about the past, I became so sad. When I thought about the future, I went into fear mode. So I learned to stay in the here and now and tell myself that in this moment I am safe. So even though these were happened upon as pure survival tools, I also still use those tools to this day. I really don't sweat the small stuff anymore. After I got married, when I realized that I couldn't completely surrender my heart and I had a wall up, I was guided to go to Peru and do ayahuasca. Excuse me. Excuse me. This was completely outside of my comfort zone, as I rarely even do a little bit of alcohol and I've never done drugs, but I went. The first thing that happened is I just started sobbing as I released a lot of grief, and it seemed like for hours. Then I saw a vision of my late husband, who told me, "You're okay, and I'm okay," and he gave me permission to go on with my life. I remember then going into a fear, and I couldn't identify it, and I couldn't release it, and I struggled with it. Eventually, it was identified to me as the fear of abandonment. I was also told that every relationship is finite. Every relationship will end someday, some way. And I had two choices about how to handle that realization. Number one, I can put up the wall and protect myself from the inevitable hurt that may come. But the other option is to recognize how precious the time is, to open my heart completely, and to experience love fully. I chose the latter, and I can say that I truly treasure the time that George and I have together now, mainly because of my experiences. We are settled in our current lives now. I still have my healing practice where I balance energy using hands-on healing as well as remote healing. I do emotional repatterning, kinesiology, hypnosis, nutrition, homeopathy, and sound healing. My husband and I share a suite in Dublin, Ohio, where he practices as a clinical psychologist. We had leased a room to a acupuncturist for about 4 years, and he used a lot of moxibustion. Due to the way the ventilation is in our suite, the smoke came into my office and I coughed and sucked on cough drops for 4 years. This left me with smoke damage to my lungs. It shows up on the SCIO as emphysema and leaves me with a chronic cough and also hoarseness, as you can tell by my voice as I'm doing my prequel. It doesn't, however, prevent me from being active. Well, between us, we have 4 children. I have a daughter and a son, and he has a son and a daughter. My daughter and her husband and their 2 children live in Columbus, Ohio. I have a grandson and a granddaughter here. My stepson lives in Colorado Springs with a 3.5-year-old daughter and his wife. My son lives in Albuquerque with his wife and 1-year-old daughter. And then my stepdaughter lives in Santa Barbara, and she's not yet married. George and I took a 6-year hiatus from ballroom dancing after our first grandson was born, but we started again 3 years ago. So we spend a lot of our time both studying and practicing and also engaging in social dancing. We also study and practice Tai Chi. The traumas that still affect me most are my knee injury, an injury to my left foot sustained while dancing, and the scarring on my right hand. I still have some lung issues and smoke from the smoke damage, and I probably have some damage to my heart muscle due to parasites that I was treated for. I do remain fairly healthy for my age, and have eaten organic food for over 30 years and have not taken one pharmaceutical for that period of time, including no Tylenol or aspirin. I possess both a Rife and a Skio device. However, since joining the QHS community, I have only utilized these in cases of acute conditions such as colds and flus or for health assessments. I have access to and occasionally utilize an EE system facility, but again, only use those for acute conditions. I have pursued natural health care since I was guided in that direction of the healing arts in 1991. I have spent my entire life in service to others, and I'm open to expanding that service to include the QHS community, but my current priority is in implementing my plans for my humanitarian project. It is both immense and it is involved. I don't consider myself alternative, but rather integrative. My belief is that you put all the tools in your tool bag and you use the least invasive thing that works. I rely on an energy model for determining the best approach. I use muscle testing on occasion, but mostly I just tap into energy, and I can assess which intervention will either balance or restore the flow of energy. This is a tool that allows me to facilitate the healing of the individuals rather than treating symptoms or disease. I joined the QHS community because the philosophies are consistent with my own beliefs and practices, but mainly because I was divinely guided to do so. I'm really grateful to be a part of this community and part of launching new medicine into a new direction. I have always marched to the beat of a different drummer, and it's refreshing to see the world catching on to the realities that have been a part of my life for decades. The only way that change can occur is if it is consumer-driven. People are waking up to the atrocities that the population has been subjected to at the hands of those who have previously controlled the world, and the people are finally standing up against these practices. I look forward to a kinder and gentler world where we can live in unity and peace and harmony. It's on the horizon. Thank you for your time and attention. Have a blessed day.
Us on the Prequel, where every story matters and every voice is heard. Because here at QHS, we're all about healing, learning, and growing together.